Hello, everyone. My apologies on the delay for this. I meant to push this out a couple weeks ago, but of course I had the cooties, and so I think maybe one of the left-leaning people might have put a voodoo doll, and so I've been dealing with that, and I'm still kind of a little sick. So my apologies, and thank you for waiting and yada yada yada, all that other good stuff. But hey, so. Let's talk about this disinformation primer. So let's see here. Let me go back just 1 second, make sure I got all of my windows opening. Okay. So today I'm going to take a hard look at the USAID Disinformation Primer. I'm only going to do one section at a time because I'm still feeling a little yucky. So, but I at least want to get this out there so you guys can view this document for yourself, and you can make your own synopsis and come up to your own conclusions. This is not, an all-inclusive thing. I'm just a layperson who happened to be taking a look at this document. I found it to be very shocking when I started to read this document. It's in my opinion, anti-American. It's un-American. It's not about what America stands for whatsoever. And the baffling thing is that this is, using taxpayer funds to create something like this, which is absolutely against everything America stands for, in my opinion. So let's get into it here real quick. So this is a 97-page internal document, which was created in February of 2021. It was pried loose via a Freedom of Information Act by the American First Legal Team. So Two points to make real quick here. Number one would be thank you for the American First Legal for doing this great work, for allowing laypersons such as myself to take a look at this document and to make our own synopsis. This is important to, documents like this are very important because it gives you a behind the scenes of what's really going on with this agency. And USAID sounds like USAID, but it's not. United States, what does it stand for? I forget. Agency for International Development. It's the brain fog. But it is everything but USAID. Now, I'm not saying that they don't do some good things. I'm sure that they have. But taking a look at this document, it'll open your eyes to really what was going on behind the scenes. And not from just an American standpoint, but from a global standpoint, where here you have an agency which is funded by American tax dollars pushing global censorship, and that's exactly what this is. So this guide from USAID's Center on Democracy, Human Rights, and Government claims to fight disinformation and intentional falsehoods threatening democracy. And it sounds noble, right? But once you dig into this, you realize there is something much more sinister and darker going on. This is a blueprint for global censorship. It's as simple as that, and it's pushed abroad under the guise of development. So we're going to break down this first section. Tomorrow I'll do section 2, section 3. But I'll also add this into my socials on X and then Facebook, so you can take a look at the PDF yourself. And dive into there, and you'll realize that, wait a minute, this is not about aid. This is about pushing global censorship. So let's go ahead and start here with the acknowledgments. Let me blow this up just a little bit, and let me make sure, yeah, that's perfect. So once you start to take a look at this document and you take a look at the participants that were responsible for the information that went into this document, given their opinions and their expertise and etc., you realize that most of these are left-leaning universities, left-leaning institutions, and one of these that I want to comment specifically on is Internews Network. You will find Internews Network in a couple different places throughout this document, but it's very important to know this. And again, Mike Benz has been instrumental at really kind of breaking this down. So I get a lot of this information from Mike. But you can take a look at, I would say, is you have the State Department here. I'll put it here, right? And then you'll have the CIA here. And then you'll have USAID. And then you'll have Internews Network, and then other individuals or agencies to push out this global propaganda machine, which is essentially state-fed news. And that's exactly what this is. And Internews Network received, I want to say it was billions of dollars. I could be wrong on that. I don't have the document here in front of me. But again, if you go to American.gov, I forget which website it is, you'll realize how much money has been funded to these organizations. And it's under the guise of development and creating these news agencies so people have access to news. It's not about that. What it is about pushing specific agendas, pushing certain narrative and narrative control. And that's exactly what's been going on. And who knows how long it has been going on. But you'll find here the United States Department of State Global Engagement Center for their review and feedback. And again, it's just this left-leaning blob of propaganda agencies that have strict control over news and narrative control. And you're seeing that now with what's going on in Europe, in the EU, specifically in England, where individuals are being arrested and jailed for months for posting memes that the state determines to be disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation. And this is contrary to what we Americans believe in our belief systems, which is the First Amendment. Now, we can go back even a little further, and you'll realize here over the last couple of years that Kamala Harris openly talked about censorship, openly talked about having some kind of mechanism in place of government control over the social media platforms. And that's exactly what this document talks about. And it's exactly what is going on in England. They have no freedom of speech. They have no freedom of speech, not only in England, but over in the EU at all. In Germany, individuals are being arrested for hate speech or disinformation or dangerous information or whatever the case may be. And so when you start to peel the onion back, you realize, this has been actively, USAID has been actively pushing this for who knows how many years, and which is the reason why Europe is in the state is where it's at. Not only just Europe, but other countries as well. And it's a blessing to be here in America, where we have our freedom of speech, where we have our Bill of Rights, and our forefathers understood that to have freedom, that we needed to have the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly. And there's a reason why the First Amendment was first. It's for that exact reason, because it meant so much in terms of the importance for our ability to express ourselves. And we should be blessed and thankful that this great American experiment has done so well. And of course, it's not perfect. No government is perfect. No country is perfect. And America is not perfect either. But the Bill of Rights and the freedom of speech is what this country was founded upon, and how quickly we almost lost that. Because I can guarantee you this, if Kamala Harris would have won, that she would be openly jailing people as we speak, just because we would be deemed as a threat to society, as a threat to democracy, under the guise of misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. And it's such a vague term that institutions, the state, leaves it vague for that reason. So they can jail people, which is exactly what they're doing in England. So thank God that we are here in America. Thank God that President Trump did win the election. And we now have a duty as Americans to turn this around, to fight for others, for other individuals, for other countries, for their own freedom. And although some people may not agree with that, and if specifically the left leaning, but that's okay. It's a slippery slope when you start jailing people for misinformation or disinformation or hate speech, because sooner or later you might be under that guise of like, oh my gosh, I said this, I didn't think it was dangerous, but they would throw you in jail anyways, right? And so thank gosh that we are here in America, and that we have the ability to express ourselves. So, all right, so I digress. Let's go into this document just a little bit further. And so the table of contents, we're just going to do part 1 today, which is why does disinformation matter? Part 2 is understanding information disorder. Part 3 is how does disinformation work online? Part 4 is what social factors contribute to disinformation. Part 5 is what are some anticipated challenges. Part 6 and Part 7 is where it gets really interesting. or what are some emerging solutions for disinformation, and part 7 is 10 things USAID and its partners can do to counter and prevent disinformation. And this was the shocking part to me for this reason is, you know, observing what you deem as misinformation and disinformation or malinformation, observing that, and just doing some analytical work on really, what people are saying, what they're doing is one thing, but and that's like a passive approach, if you will. But actively taking steps to discredit individuals, to discredit platforms, to discredit groups is a whole nother ball of wax. And that's exactly what this document talks about, and what countries can do to fight this against their own citizens, what countries can do to fight against technology companies, right? And again, this is a shocking document, and American taxpayers paid for this document to teach other countries and other agencies throughout this world to actively fight against freedom of speech, which is, again, it's just baffling to me and shocking. So I never thought, in America here, that we'd be dealing with this, was some type of social systems, socialism, if you will, that the state knows what's best for you. It's disgusting in every regard. All right, so let me go ahead and read the Disinformation Primer. It's all those social media platforms have emerged as the most efficient spreaders of false information. Disinformation is also spread through analog media such as radio, television, and newspapers. It is, however, the combination of traditional analog media in concert with new digital technologies that allows information to spread faster and more broadly, even across borders, in unprecedented ways. Experts, quote unquote experts, again, left-leaning experts, all of them left-leaning, have described this phenomenon as information disorder. And that's the big term that you'll find in here. This information disorder, and it defines it here. Information disorder is a condition in which truth and facts coexist in a milieu of misinformation and disinformation, conspiracy theories, lies, propaganda, and half-truths. This primer presents several programmatic ideas to consider for standalone or integrative approaches as part of democracy and governance-related programming. Hear that term again. Governance-related programming. Let's talk about that term. And this should just blow your mind in terms of the programming. What do they mean by programming? And you'll find that throughout this document, this term programming. What does that mean? It's exactly what it means. It means that as long as you go with USAID, you'll receive funding. As long as you go with the narrative, you'll receive funding, and you'll be part of this program, this programming per se, right? That occurs. So think of it this way. To me, programming is USAID acting as a soft power architect. It's less about aid like food or schools, but it's more about controlling narratives, the programming. So in other words, we'll fund the media, we'll train the fact checkers, and nudge the policies because we know what is true, right? We know what is true, and the laypersons, they can't know what is true. And that's a shift from development to influencing. And this is not what America stands for. And this is public programming on a global scale. All you have to do is take a look at, who's being funded by USAID. Who's being funded by them? And anyone who is receiving funding had to go along with the specific narratives. Well, what kind of narratives would they talk about? Well, we'll get into that here in a second. But first, before we go into that, let's talk about why does disinformation matter. And this is the alarmist kind of attitude that goes into this, is that experts from academia, left-leaning academia, government, civil society, and media agree that disinformation is a problem with social, political, and economic ramifications. A study by Prevency, a German international consulting group for reputational risk and crisis management, found that disinformation costs the global economy $78 billion per year, including in share prices, brand reputation management, blah, 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 right? But here's the thing. They give no idea. I mean, it's an alarmist attitude. They give no compelling information to how they came up with that dollar amount, right? There's no mathematical formula they used. They just put this out there, and it sets a panic tone in the entire document. And it's called like a wicked problem, like climate change. And my concern is this, is that this is an alarmism, justifies heavy-handed control by framing disinformation as an existential threat. USAID opens the door to censoring anything labeled disinformation, including true but inconvenient speech. So let's talk about that for a second. What does that mean? Well, let's think about the COVID-19 and the vaccine stories that we're hearing. Now that information's been coming out about the COVID vaccine and how it has, there's been a plethora of individuals that have been harmed from the vaccine. You couldn't talk about this 3 years ago. And so much so, let me give you an example. So Robert Malone is an American physician and biochemist known for his early contributions to mRNA technology in the late 1980s. He conducted experiments demonstrating that mRNA, when packaged in lipid nanoparticles, and again, I don't know what this stuff means. He knows what this stuff means, but I'm just stating the obvious or the case for him. It could be delivered into cells to produce proteins, an important step forward that would eventually become mRNA vaccines. Okay, so here you have the guy, Dr. Malone, who's essentially considered like the godfather of mRNA technology. He alone, this individual, has faced significant pushback on social media platforms due to his outspoken views on COVID-19 vaccines, which often diverge from mainstream public health narratives. So again, it's the state, which is the judge, the jury, and the executioner when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. Dr. Malone has faced significant pushback on social media platforms due to his outspoken views on the COVID-19 vaccines, which again often diverge from mainstream public narratives. Robert Malone was banned and faced significant pushback on social media largely because of his outspoken views. Platforms like Twitter, back then Jack Dorsey owned it, YouTube, which is completely left and anti-freedom of speech, and LinkedIn, which is anti-freedom of speech as well, took action against him starting in 2021. Targeting consent, where he questioned the vaccine's safety and efficacy, views that often clash with consensus from health authorities like the CDC and the WHO. And of course, the WHO, now America has left the World Health Organization, and rightfully so. So, again, it's about the state being the judge, the jury, and the executioner when it comes to this stuff. And this is anti-American. And go back again to Kamala Harris, who openly talked about having some type of government censorship role for the government on social media platforms. This is exactly what she would have pushed if she had one. And excuse me. Okay, so I think I beat up that topic pretty much. So let's hear. Okay, so now let's talk about this disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. So let me make sure that all of this is, so you guys can see it. So this page here identifies and it defines these terms, right? So page 14, disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. It defines disinformation as intentional lies, misinformation as unintentional errors, and malinformation, true info used to harm. So let's focus on the term misinformation and disinformation. And let me go ahead and pull this up real quick. This is another, and they even broke it down in terms of fighting information disorder, and then it kind of gives you some fancy schmancy graphs, which really is just appalling to me. But anyways, so these labels, misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation, these labels are used frequently by progressive politicians, media outlets, and reporters to categorize and sideline specific viewpoints or claims. You're seeing this in real time, not only abroad, but in the United States as well, with censorship such as Facebook, which is still, openly censoring people. Google, which censors like you wouldn't believe, and YouTube, of course, owned by Google, is not a platform for free speech, and this is why you're seeing more and more people go to X and other platforms such as Rumble that allows the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, which is exactly what this country was founded upon. So let's see here. So malinformation is the kicker. And here's why it's so important. So think leaking a politician's private email to expose corruption. The primer will tell you that it harms, that this is harmful, right? But who decides? Like USAID, the state, the vagueness could censor legitimate speech globally, which they have done. And you're seeing this play out through, what's going on in Europe and other countries. In countries with weak free speech, such as the UK and Germany, there is a gray area, and it's by design. The state is the judge, the jury, and the executioner, which should be concerning to all of us. And again, this more alarmist type stuff, disinformation posing an existential threat to democracy. The spread of misinformation and disinformation is having an absolutely corrosive impact on the institutions and norms that enable democratic governance. And here from the Irish Examiner, and again, anything coming from Europe, anything at all, is going to be leaning towards the state because they want to indoctrinate their people. I think they have indoctrinated some of their people. Well, I mean, even in America, we have some liberals and left that have been indoctrinated as well. But it is what it is. To each his own. But we need to be cautious about our information hygiene as we are about our hand hygiene for the sake of public health and democracy. And most worryingly, disinformation is a significant force that can undermine democracy and good governance, free and fair elections, access to information, rule of law, protection of human rights, independent media, and civil society action. This document does the exact opposite. It does not protect the rule of law. It does not protect human rights or independent media. It shuns them. Not only does it shun them, but it hamstrings them. And it's just shocking what is in this document and how an American agency is completely comfortable with posting this information. It's anti-American. So, all right, here. And here again, because traditional information systems are failing, some opinion leaders are casting doubt on media, which in turn impacts USAID programming and funding choices. Again, it's all about the program. It's all about indoctrinating. It's all about making sure that everyone who is part of the USAID programming is playing their part in controlling narratives, in controlling freedom of speech, in controlling specific mechanisms that would be available to other human beings if they had freedom of speech, right? So across all USAID programming countries, there you go, gets the indoctrination. This requires a solid understanding of disinformation and robust approaches for countering and preventing it. And it gives you an example here of what was going on in Brazil and yada, yada, yada. And again, it's just more of the state propaganda is what this is. And a shocking thing for Americans to be part of this. Authoritarian leaders add to the loss of information by integrity by delegitimizing the media, claiming news sources are faulty or corrupt, and the weaponization of fake news. And again, I think this is just more of the same here. So this is essentially part one. Let me know what you guys think. Again, this is just my own 2 cents, and I will post part 2 tomorrow. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the true patriots that are out there doing the best they can to open up the Pandora's box with what was truly going on with USAID, what was truly going on with the state-sponsored media, and also what was going on with, frankly, the left-leaning Democratic Party, which has just been wasting billions of dollars to perpetuate their ideology, which is essentially what this document is. So, thank you very much. Part 2 will be tomorrow. Appreciate you guys. Namaste.